A very pertinent issue when it comes to corporate culture in the 21st century is matters gender pay gap, which is at the heart of today's debate. And the motion reads, the Kenyan government should make it mandatory for all companies to disclose their gender pay gap to promote equality. I read the motion again. The Kenyan government should make it mandatory for all companies to disclose their gender pay gap to promote equality. Proposing and opposing this motion is Nairobi School versus Moi Forces Academy. I've been your host, Jaina Cheng, and all the best to both teams. Team proposition, first speaker, you have 3 minutes.
The Kenyan government should make it mandatory for all companies to disclose their gender pay gap to promote equality. Now, Mark Karaoke from Moi Forces Academy here to strongly advocate for this motion. Now, the SDG dealing with this motion is SDG number 5, which states on gender equality, and SDG number 10, reduce inequalities. Now, onto the definition of terms. What is mandatory disclosure? This is the legal requirement for companies to publicly reveal information. Now, what is the gender pay gap? This is the average difference in pay between men and women, often expressed as a percentage. Now, what is promote equality? This is the effort to ensure equal treatment and opportunities regardless of genders. Now, we as Team Proposition have realized the main issue in this motion. What is the issue? According to United Nations Women Africa, the average gender pay gap is 17.7% on an hourly basis and 31.3% on a monthly basis. This is the issue, ladies and gentlemen. Panel, this is the issue we are currently facing. The current issue is gender inequality. Now, our stance as the advocates is that we believe mandatory disclosure of the gender pay gap will effectively tackle the status quo, which is the gender inequality, as other alternatives such as quota systems, which resulted in tokenism, which they basically failed to address inequalities. This was proven a fact in 2017 as Kenya tried this method. Now, how does the pay gap disclose promotes equality? Now, spotlighting inequalities, this is the first point. This will expose systemic inequities, promoting internal and external pressure to address these issues. Now, you as the people, you as the women, as the men in the current society, when you are made aware of the gender pay gap, this will impose you to take a stance against this system. This will impose you to act against this system, which will later on promote gender equality. Now, panel, pay gap disclosure does not only tackle gender inequality, but benefits the employers and society as well. How, you may ask? Through the disclosure, employees gain a clear understanding of the pay structure within their company, allowing them to make informed decisions about their careers. Public awareness of gender pay gaps can drive societal and legislative change, pushing for policies that promote gender equality. Now, panel, I have shown you that our solution does not only tackle the status quo, but also deal with the current status of the society as it affects the employees at large and also affects the community we live in. Now, requiring gender pay gap disclosure is not merely a regulatory burden. It is a necessary step toward ensuring that half of our workforce is not systematically undervalued. An example of this is the United Kingdom, as they employed the regulations on making the gender pay gap public to the society in 2017. This resulted in the upbringing of revolt against the gender pay gap, in revolt against the inequalities that happen within the companies. Panel, this is what we are implying. This is what we want to happen because we believe that this is a solution to our current problems. Thank you for your time.
From the opposition side, I'm here to strongly oppose the motion that states that the government should make it mandatory for all companies to disclose their gender pay gap to promote equality. So the main question here, what is equality? Out from the stereotype. We cannot continue burying our heads in the sand like the proverb ostriches. We cannot continue acting as if we're from Tumbuku. What is gender equality? So, for example, our company has employed 2 workers from gender A and gender B. So, the person from gender A works and puts in more hours than the person from gender B. On paper, yes, they're going to be paid the same. But then, what if that other gender is paid more for the much effort they put in? Do we really focus on that? We cannot keep on saying that women are being humiliated and being given less salaries than men. The question is, what are the women doing to it? I have a question in what you had said about disclosure. Number one, we're not saying that the companies should not disclose. What you're saying is that the government should not make the companies make the disclosure mandatory. Let the disclosure be voluntary. So one day, I was with my sister, and then my dad told me that you can become an engineer because you are a man. And he told my sister that she can become an engineer although she's a woman. Therefore, most of the arguments they're based on, it's based on past references and stereotypes. Now we need to come to the current situation now. I also have another question. How did my sister feel? How did my sister feel when my dad told her, you can become an engineer although you're a woman? How did she feel? That is the main question to be answered. Number one, if we close these gender pay gaps, that will lead to conflicts in work areas between the two genders, meaning there'll be a push and pull, making probably the gender that is being favored more put in extra hours of work, putting in extra efforts that will push them past their own capacity, meaning people will also lose morale in work because why should I go to work when I know outrightly well that this gender is paid more than this one? I don't want to specify genders because different companies have their own methods. Although most companies as at now in Kenya, they favor the paying of women more than men, there are also some companies which also favor the pay of women. Number one, and in continuation now to my point, transparency alone does not guarantee equality. That is the main argument to also those companies disclosing their gender pay gap. Because if we show them that there is a gap in how we pay them, then how do we control that and ensure that there is equality between both genders? That's my case.
Agent Jendo, Moi Forces Academy, and without wasting much further time, I'd like to get to it. Now, First Speaker Opposition came here and presented their case. But what they presented to us, to the House, is that they are trying to prove there is gender inequality. Now, we are not here to debate about gender inequality because we know gender inequality is there and we have identified it in our status quo. Because I don't know what debate room you've been in right now, because my first speaker came here and told you that we are here to tackle this motion that states the Kenya government should make it mandatory for all companies to disclose their gender pay gap to promote equality. The problem at hand is gender inequality. We have identified it as a problem and we are here to solve it. We're not here to debate about it. Now, our solution will help satisfy SDG number 5, which is gender equality, and SDG number 10, which is reduced inequalities. Their first speaker came here and told us that transparency alone is not enough to help solve the gender pay gap that is currently in our country and worldwide. Now, my question to team opposition is that, can you provide a convincing reason why transparency and accountability, which are fundamental to any fair system, shouldn't be applied to gender pay practices? Now, on to my first point. We as Team Proposition are here to propagate transparency and equality. That is why we are proposing for mandatory disclosure of the gender pay gap in companies. Now you see, mandatory disclosure compels companies to address the elephant in the room, which is gender inequality, and will promote transparency and equality will be properly dealt with when they receive pressure from the public. Now, another thing we are here to do is that we want to reduce the discrimination that is facing the gender pay gap. Now, mandatory disclosure highlights pay disparities. After highlighting, companies will take initiative to ensure fair practice. Now, you see, the alternatives that they are providing to the House are being implemented in the country since 2007 up to date. Now, what we're actually doing is the alternative. We are here to provide financial literacy, which is an alternative that they're going to bring to the house. Now, you see, even though we are addressing financial literacy, we are still here to debate about the gender pay gap because it's still there. So this means that the alternative is not working. Now you see, we as Team Proposition are planning to put in a framework that makes sure that the gender pay gap introduced by mandatory disclosure will be solved. How are we planning to do this? We are planning to introduce a legal mandate through the principle that we enact legislation that requires all companies above a certain size to annually disclose their gender pay gap. The mechanism is amend existing labor laws to include specific clauses on gender pay gap disclosure and establish penalties for non-compliances. The penalties will be such as suspension of licenses. If you don't comply to the mandatory disclosure, we will take your license and we'll shut you off, just like we just shut you off. That has been my time. Agent General Moi Forces. Thank you.
In front of you, this is the second opposer for the motion. The Kenyan government should make it mandatory for all companies to disclose the gender pay gap to promote equality. The proposition had two statements. The first speaker clearly said that their fifth SDG is to promote gender equality, and the second speaker comes and says that it's not. So kindly please tell us which side of the motion are you on. And you also talked about transparency. Transparency only shows, it does not guarantee enforcement. What stops a company from using unorthodox methods? For example, the government makes it compulsory for every company to disclose its gender pay gaps. What closes my company from me going through unorthodox methods to get things such as creative accounting and adjusting salaries to appear equal, but in real sense you haven't tackled the elephant in the room? And you also talked about legal mandate and giving out penalties. It still falls under companies can still come and fake everything. It's just a matter of show. On to my first point, this will bring about conflicts in the company. Let's take gender A and gender B. Gender A realizes that gender B earns more money, whereas they think that they do the same job. In real sense, when they were applying for the same job, in their contracts, there wasn't anything like do something extra and get extra amount of money. So in real sense, if that gender sits down and is like, why are we earning less than these other ones? It will automatically lead to boycotts. I will give you a case example from Tanzania, Uzima Waters Company. According to BBC Africa, 4 years ago, it did this exact same thing. It decided to disclose its gender gap apparently so that it can bring about equality. Believe it or not, 2 years later, the company went to receivership. Why? Because the women in that company actually came and realized that they are doing the exact same job as men, but in real sense, men are earning more. So this will automatically lead to conflict in there, which will also lead to detrimental effects in the company. Because if you take an example of that same company, right now it has nothing. Another one is such a policy could impose unnecessary burdens to a business. Do you think it's really cheap for a small business? Let's take small and medium-sized businesses. Stop taking your big-sized businesses. Do you think it's really affordable for those companies to sit down, take all the necessary salaries for all their people and come and show you? That will obviously reduce their profit margin and has also helped in these Uzima companies. That's one of the reasons as to why their company failed. They used a lot of their income to bring about all this case study, and the boycotts that came after that led to their closure. So I think that in this motion, our main aim actually is, to be honest, wahenga kudanganya waliposema kuwa whatever you don't know can't kill you. Let's just be honest. So I think that in real sense over here, however the gender pay gap is right now, trying to bring about another aspect of it, trying to say that we should disclose it will only have detrimental effects to the company, so we should actually stop bringing about big companies and all. Try focusing on small companies, middle-sized companies. I rest my case.
You can take a cow to the river, but you cannot force it to drink water. You can show the motion to team opposition, but you cannot force them to understand it. So therefore, I, as the third speaker of this motion, I'm going to bring back this team here to the motion itself. Luke Ottoman, Moi Forces Academy. From speaker 1 to 2, they have all been talking about gender inequality and how they're going to counter it. But let us understand this motion that we are not talking about gender inequality only. We are talking about making it mandatory for all companies to disclose the gender pay gaps in order to achieve what now they are talking, gender equality. Now, on to the first point that the first speaker talked about is protecting confidentiality. And now, as a STEAM proposition, we state that the benefits of transparency outweigh confidentiality and privacy concerns, which simply we can anonymize this personal data and be able to protect the personal user rights. Second point, unintended consequences. We as STEAM proposition are going to we are going to face these short-term challenges, which are, for example, economic structures, which are going to lead to the losses which are going to be faced by these companies, and be able to make them be to our benefit, in the sense that these losses are going to be outweighed by the long-term benefits of our team proposition, which is benefits of fairness and equality. Third point, consideration of all types of companies, which are SMEs and MSMEs. We are going to have a diversified pay gap disclosure for providing accountability and comparisons across all industries and companies and set entrepreneur firms. Now, they have come here and stated that our team is going to face economic burden to the Kenyan government. Let us state that we are going to implement a phased approach, which was stated by our second speaker when he came here and said we are going to implement a phased approach. Okay, so in this sense, we are not going to do this mandatory disclosure program at once. We are going to do it step by step, from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3, in order to be able to achieve what? Gender pay gap disparity, which is going to be minimal and hence promoting equality. They come here and talk about privacy concerns. We have stated that we are going to anonymize personal data, thus protecting the users. They come here and talk about potential misuse of data, and we are going to develop stricter regulations and penalties on misused data. Now, this team still came here and has not given us a framework. Therefore, my question to team opposition is one. Can the opposition provide a better alternative that ensures the same level of transparency and accountability in addressing the gender pay gap disparities? And with that, I rest our case, and I rest their case even further.
Ignorance is bliss. As simple as this motion is, it is quite disappointing that in the same way and magnitude it can be understood, it can also be misunderstood, distorted, and misfigured so that it can fit their argument. And that is what they are doing. So, my name is Joseph Mwenda Kitavi from Nairobi School, here to debate, and not only just debate, but also to give insight on what really seems as an opinionated statement, which is the Kenyan government should make it mandatory for all companies to disclose their gender pay gaps to promote equality. So, this is my urge to you, to the panel. Don't be impressed by their shiny bag of tricks. For just like ornaments or fake gold ornaments, they want you to see them but not ask questions. So, the main argument is based on SDG number 5, which the first speaker said. Then the second speaker comes here and tells us that no, we are not actually talking about gender inequality. We are talking about trying to disclose these gender pay gaps to people. And yet the first speaker came here and said that we are talking about gender SDG number 5, right? Yes. So what the question is, which side of the motion are you debating on? Because clearly you also don't know which side you are in. Okay. You also say that, people should be paid more because the gender pay gap exists because some people are being paid lower than others. So you say that we need to rise the ones who are being paid low so that you can fit the equilibrium. But let me tell you, yes, we agree, but you're not saying that that is not a guarantee. It is not guaranteed that is going. If we disclose the gender pay gaps, we're not saying that, we are not guaranteed that something will be done, actually. Okay, our argument was based on the fact that it brings out conflict, thus interrupt the workflow. Also, it brings about a fall in morale, thus low performance in work. And also, let me just say, are we saying that is it disclosing it to the public or for eyes only, for the government? That's the question I pose to you. Because if you say that it creates initiative to the people to campaign for equal pay, you're only fixated on being disclosed to the public as thorough as we are, we do not understand that it can be to both. Because yet we can disclose, but that does not mean only to the public. It can also mean disclosing it to the government. So, and by the way, if you take time to understand that the motion says make it mandatory, that means pay gaps already might have been disclosed, but they are not mandatory. It's optional. And that is why we looked into the companies in Kenya that it closed the pay gaps in to both the government and the public. We do agree that transparency is very important, but it is not sufficient. But just saying this is how we promote equality does not mean that there is enforcement. You'd rather have said enforcement, but you did not. You cannot take a cow to the river, but you cannot force it to drink water. Then why are you saying that if we disclose the gender pay gaps, we are going to raise an initiative? Then what guarantees that the people are going to act? We are just disclosing. Yeah. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Adrian General for the last time today, and I'm here to speak on what the third speaker has come here and highlighted. He came here and told us this is a simple motion that can either be understood or misunderstood, and that shows that they haven't understood this motion, because all the while they were here, they were only debating about gender equality. He came here and said that, and I quote, people should be paid more. He said that we say that people should be paid more. The only thing that needs to be paid more is attention, because you're not paying any attention to this debate. Now, panel, we came here and provided a framework. We provided a framework of how we can make mandatory disclosure work, yet they came here to deny our solution. They haven't given us any solution to how they are planning to make these alternative solutions work. These alternative solutions have been in motion ever since time immemorial, even before you were born, and yet they're still not working. That's why we are here debating. Now, we as team opposition come forth to you. We come forth to you, and we bring statistics with us. United Kingdom, since the mandatory gender pay gap reporting in 2017, awareness of pay disparities has increased, leading to some improvements in pay equality prices. Iceland enacted legislation in 2018 requiring companies to prove they pay men and women equally. This has helped close the gender pay gap significantly. Australia, the Workplace Gender Equality Agency requires businesses 100 or more employees to report on gender equality indicators, including pay. This has led to more informed public debates and corporate strategies addressing pay disparities. We came here and asked in proposition questions that they have not answered. I believe we killed this debate even before it got off the ground, and we killed team opposition. Thank you.
Here for the last time is Demuti and Mudhomi within Nairobi School. I think that according to your ChatGPT search, you didn't really search the word mandatory. What do you mean by making it mandatory and we still have small companies that don't have the capabilities to do this work? This isn't really cheap. I think that you really forgot to look at the aspect of the cost on the companies themselves, on how much it will really cost them to do this. And from what you've just said, we're not the ones who brought about the issue of gender. Remember, your SDG number 5 was talking about gender inequality, not us. We just came and showed you that you're the ones who brought it up, and your third speaker clearly continued with the same thing. And the fact of this entire thing was in motion ever before we were born. What difference has it made? Okay, I was born in 2005. It has been in motion. What difference has it made? Companies have been forced to do it. What difference has it made? Companies have the capabilities of just faking. If you make it mandatory, companies will just come and bring for you fake things on paper for you people to think that everything is okay right now, but in reality, things aren't okay. I think that the main message is for us to promote something voluntary for the companies to decide, not making it mandatory. Let the companies decide voluntarily to do this. That will be better than forcing them, which will actually just make them go and use unorthodox methods. I rest my case. Thank you.
A round of applause, please, for both teams on stage. Thank you very much for such passionate arguments. We'll move straight to the judge's desk. Judge Maweu.
Moi Forces Academy and Nairobi School, you've done a good job. This is a rather stormy motion. Matters to do with the gender quite sensitive. Mark, Moy Forces Academy, you did a good definition of terms, and that was good. You gave a good example from the UK. I love that. Adrian, good rebuttals. You have talked about how to reduce these gender pay issues and through legislation, and that came out quite well. I wish you could reduce the reading bit so that we see more of your facial expressions. Luke, wonderful rebuttals. You are composed on stage. But all the same, the three of you have done a good job. To Nairobi School, Walcott, you have done a good mastery of the motion. That one was evident. You have not told us the source of the statement on how men versus women are paid in Kenya. You talked about many companies paying women more than men, but we did not get it. Where exactly have you got that idea from?
You know, when we are judging, there's something we look at, which is coherency of argument, and not only with an individual speaker, but even with the team. So for both teams, I enjoyed that your argument was coherent across the three of you. For instance, the opposing school, Nairobi School, you stuck with the narrative that even with transparency, this doesn't guarantee equality. So, and you, speaker after speaker, you're able to push that point, and it came across as coherent. For Moy Forces Academy, you're able to look about you are talking about the motion and talking about something that is not about a question of gender equality, but rather would we discuss what's on the motion. So, and every speaker was coming and they speak about it, that we're not talking here, we're not discussing the gender equality or inequality. We are talking about this issue of the government should actually make it mandatory or not. So that was good, and I enjoyed this. Both of you executed the motion well. We see how the results will be. All the best.